Welcome to Contracting Conversations. I'm Leah Arkush. This podcast is found on DAU Media, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you like it, please, at the end of this recording, hit the like button. It really helps us continue to bring you great content. Today, we have with us DAU Professor Emeritus Kelley Kiernan, who has the task of clarifying contracting cybersecurity for the Warfighting Acquisition University and the acquisition workforce. Kelley has served as a NASA engineer, an Air Force scientist, a military pilot, and a cybersecurity professional. She's worked in the industry and was assigned to the Navy in fiscal year 23. She graduated from the Air Force Academy and served in the Air Force, where she was the recipient of the Air Medal. Kelley, welcome to Contracting Conversations.
Thanks, Leah. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I just love getting the word out about cybersecurity. CMMC 2.0 is now the law of the land with 2 final rules and a brand new class deviation. The contracting world, and I am hoping we can cover the basics today and clear up a few things and have a little fun while we're at it.
Kelley, I have to admit, CMMC is a little daunting, and I could really use the short version and some resources. Can you help us break through the mystery and understand how to get a handle on CMMC?
Sure, Leah. It's all about protecting Department of War data, risk management, and our vital supply chain.
How about a little primer on cybersecurity and data protection?
Sure, Leah. When it comes to cybersecurity, it's all about the data and the network it's on. And then we move on to the amount of risk we're willing to take with that data and network in order to protect our vital Department of War supply chain. Cybersecurity encompasses 3 aspects of data protection: confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. We'll have links below to resource information where you can learn more about the protection triad of data security.
But Kelley, there are so many types of data in the Department of War. How do we sort them out?
Sure, Leah. Let's talk about data in the unclassified realm. Let's start with the data that every contract, every agreement, every OT, every CSO has, which is federal contracting information, which we refer to as FCI. It is data about that contract, which is meant to never become public. FCI then is the contract documents themselves, all of them, whatever you might have, the SU, the SAL, the milestones, and nearly all of the email exchanges between the contractor and the contracting team. Of course, there may be other documents that are not meant to become public also.
Okay, I know you're going to talk about everyone's favorite, CUI.
That's right. CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information, must also be protected, but at a higher level. CUI also must be marked and is often subject to dissemination controls. Plus, we must stay on the lookout for CUI to possibly aggregate within a contract or a contractor information system. We all know that story. If you had enough unclassified information, think of them as puzzle pieces, and you put them together, you might be able to create a classified picture. That's what aggregation is all about, and that's why we have to stay on the lookout for it.
Okay, so every contract handles FCI, but how do we make it known if a contract handles CUI?
Leah, that's a great question. In the past, we may have had contractors walking around wondering if their contracts provided or generated controlled unclassified information. CMMC fixes that by assigning a CMMC level based upon the type of data, perhaps the type of CUI, which will be provided to the contractor or generated by the contractor. Remember that CDRLs are key to the proper protection of Department of War data, and Department of War contracting teams are required by DODI 5200.48, Section 5.3, to articulate any dissemination controls in the contract, grant, or other legal agreement via CDRLs.
So Kelley, that now brings us to another thing that can be very confusing, which is how do we mark CUI?
Leah, yes. The bottom line is to mark CUI and protect it via encryption. But how to understand what data we work with is actually CUI. The first step is to say that if you're going to mark data as CUI, you will need to know which category of CUI it is. The only way I've found to get your arms around the categories of CUI is to review all 100 categories of CUI. And there are many ways to accomplish that review. You can review them at the National Archives website. You can find another version of the presentation at www.dodcui.mil. But whichever you choose, review the list and take note of those types of CUI that intersect with your work. Once you are familiar with the categories of CUI that affect your work, the CUI training will make more sense. Of course, we have our federal training available to anyone at the CDSE website. We'll link that below. And then the Department of War has created its own training for the Department of War CUI program at, again, www.dodcui.mil. That should be your go-to website. And of course, the Warfighting Acquisition University has many courses and webinars on the topic of controlled unclassified information.
Okay, so now we know how to sort out what is CUI and how to go about marking it. How do we protect it?
Leah, when it comes to contracts and agreements, it is the DFARS 252-204-7012, which we're all very familiar with, which tells us that the definition of adequate security for the protection of controlled unclassified information is the implementation of the national standard NIST SP 800-171. CMMC has simplified the path for the contracting team to be assured that the contractor has implemented NIST SP 800-171 and is ready to protect Department of War CUI.
So is this the point then where CMMC comes in?
Yes, Leah, this is where CMMC comes in. CMMC sets data protection assessment requirements or levels according to what type of data needs to be protected over the life of the contract. Program managers and contracting teams will coordinate and determine which of the 4 CMMC levels is appropriate for the data that the contract will provide and generate. This CMMC level is broadcast in the solicitation and verified by the contracting team prior to contract award. The CMMC program is also using a phased implementation plan. This phased approach allows time to train assessors and for companies to understand and implement CMMC assessment requirements.
So for the Department of War then, Kelley, what's the official training for CMMC?
Leah, the official training resides at the Warfighting Acquisition University's website and is in the form of 3 online classes and several Wikipedia articles and short lessons. The Department of War CMMC website is also a goldmine of information. We'll link all of these below.
Okay, Kelley, I know that you give webinars on CMMC almost every week as a part of the Warfighting Acquisition University's Cyber Solutions program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, Leah. The Warfighting Acquisition University has the contracting team's back. There is a website called Cyber Solutions, which is dedicated to contract cybersecurity. And within that site, you will find all the DoD resources for CMMC, as well as lessons prepared on various CMMC topics, and those weekly webinars you mentioned, which are recorded every week, so contracting teams can go back and have a listen if they had to miss the actual webinar event. Look for a link below or just search www.dau.edu/events. And if someone has an idea for a Cyber Solutions webinar topic, just let us know.
This has been a great overview about CMMC. Can you boil it down to what exactly contracting teams need to do to stay on top of CMMC?
Sure, Leah. There are 6 items which need to be studied in order to be ready for CMMC implementation. Contracting teams really do need to read the Part 32 CMMC program final rule and the Part 48 CMMC DFARS final rule. We'll link those below. And then there are 2 CMMC implementation guidance memos in the acquisition toolbox, which we will also link below. And then on the 4th item, there are frequently asked questions posted on the CMMC website. It's posted prominently, and those need to be a steady reference for everyone. And lastly, there are the 3 online courses we already talked about on the Warfighting Acquisition University website, which make up the official CMMC training. And everybody needs to take at least one, Leah. I recommend the CYB 1020 for CMMC implementers. And then don't forget, of course, Cyber Solutions has a webinar every week, which covers a different aspect of CMMC or contract cybersecurity. And we answer everyone's questions at the webinar. So be sure to dial in.
Thanks, Kelley. So in closing, do you have any last bits of advice for contracting teams?
Leah, yes. The weak point in all of this program seems to be identifying the various categories of controlled unclassified information. So if you find that categorizing CUI is still confusing, know that every Department of War agency is associated with an information protection office. That office might be at the wing or echelon or brigade level, but we all have one. We all have an information protection team to help us with identifying, marking, and protecting controlled unclassified information.
Well, thank you, Kelley, for being with us today and talking about CMMC at a top level. I know I'll be dialing into your weekly webinars to learn the finer points and best practices of CMMC.
You're welcome, Leah. It was great to be here with you today. And yes, we'll be discussing CMMC policies, the DFAR itself, solicitations, CMMC level selection, and what to look for in SPURS every week. See you at the webinar.
That's all the time we have for today, but please, as mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Contracting Conversations channel. Like the content, share the content, and spread the word of this channel to your peers, those you supervise or lead. Let us help you answer their questions. We look forward to having future contracting conversations with you.